slipped on black ice, and my car started going and spinning around and around. Finally, I put my hands up to the Lord and said, Lord, you take the wheel.
Oh my, you literally let go.
I let go.
Okay.
And said, Lord, wherever I land, it's up to you.
This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide, and we see the hand of God. We see him right there. Through a prophetic dream or a near-death experience, an encounter with an angel, miraculous healings, whatever it is. And we share those stories here, thanks to you and your stories, here on Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Am I saying that the next time you're in the car, you should just say, here, Jesus, just take the wheel? No, I'm not saying that. Are we saying that there may be times where that action is called for? Here, Jesus, you drive. Isn't that just a little over the top? Since I'm legally blind, and again, if you're going to be blind, please be legally blind. Thank you. People ask me about the Google car. Are you looking forward to being able to just hop into a car and tell it where to go and it just takes you? I say, yeah, that'll be so cool. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see that kind of technology for the masses, I think. And people usually say to me, I'd never get in one of those cars. Why not? Oh, man, I don't trust it. I wouldn't trust that kind of technology. Meanwhile, people are getting in accidents all over the place. Human error everywhere. Thousands of accidents every day. But we trust ourselves more than the technology. Is there an analogy to be made that God is the ultimate Google car, where we're in the driver's seat, but we choose not to touch the steering wheel? We let God drive and we go along. Ooh, let's make that analogy, shall we? Because that's being offered to us, the ultimate Google car, the God Google car, where we trust in him so much on a day-to-day basis. Where are we going today, God? That we trust that much that we don't touch the steering wheel. We're on for the ride. Now, the destination's already programmed in, right? Heaven. We're going to heaven. If we follow God's plan, we're going to end up in heaven. We know that, right? We know that. Okay, so destination's heaven. What else do we know? We know we will find our purpose in life, of course, because we're going to drive right through it. We're going to find our purpose in life. We're going to find we live. Well, nothing can take us out until we've fulfilled that purpose, so we live for however long we live. Nothing can take us out because we're in the plan. We would trust God that much. It's like, okay, you drive. And what's a byproduct? What's a byproduct? He's driving. Well, we're not feeling the stresses. We're not feeling that angst. We're not feeling, what do we feel? We feel peace. If I trust God that much, I feel nothing but peace. No matter what happens on our journey, no matter the bumpy roads along the way, no matter what, I'm good with it, God. I trust you that much that I know you love me so much that you love me more than anybody ever could. Peace. I'm going to have peace in my life. So why don't we do that? Because there's a steering wheel there and we want it. Ooh, look what's over there. I want to drive over there. Let's go taste that. Let's go touch that. Let's go feel that. Let's go do that. Because there's a steering wheel and driving is so seductive, isn't it? We want to drive our own car. We get to play God with our own lives. I'm in control of my life. No one else is in control. I'm driving the car. So that it just outweighs that kind of what seems to be a vague promise of peace and whatever all that stuff is over there. I'm driving the car, but what comes with driving? You know this. You get a little stressed out there. You get a little angry on the road. Get tired. A little sleepy. Things don't always go real well, do they? You get lost. What's the destination? Not sure. I'm lost. Where's my GPS? But what we will demonstrate in this episode is something else happens when we trust in God. Touched by heaven moments. God moments. Encounter happens when we trust in God because we unplug from this physical world and we plug directly into heaven. And all of a sudden we aren't operating by earthly, worldly rules. We're operating by heavenly rules where anything can happen. Jesus appeared to St. Faustina back in the 30s, right? And from that we get the image of divine mercy. Jesus as this image of divine mercy. And right there at the bottom of this image are the words, Jesus, I trust in you. That's supposed to be our daily mantra. Jesus, I trust in you everywhere. It doesn't matter what you're doing, wherever you are, if we can just live there. Jesus, I trust in you. in our conversations, in our business dealings, in our personal relationships, and when we get hit with that stress and we go, Jesus, I trust in you, for at least a moment, we get lifted out of it. And the idea is to keep getting lifted up more and more and more and more, so we don't live in the stresses anymore. We live in that peace beyond all understanding. Jesus said to St. Faustina, the souls that trust in me receive more. More what? More everything. More blessings, more graces, more trust, more faith. We get fortified. The souls that trust in me receive more. Last week's episode, I should have mentioned this last week. There's something, the Heidi Kraus story. Heidi and Kurt were driving the 50 miles on empty story. I mean, they're on nothing. They're on fumes, and the car just keeps going and going and going. Why? Because here's what Heidi did. Heidi brought heaven down to earth. Heidi literally brought heaven down to earth, and we can do that. This is such an important part. This is what we learned on the Blind Faith Live podcast every week, how we can lasso heaven and bring it down to earth. We can cause collisions by trusting in God, because trust is love. Acceptance of everything that happens in our lives and saying, I'm okay, God. It's all part of some big plan. I may not understand it, but I'm with you, God. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. I accept it. I accept it. Huge levels of love in that. Huge. Heidi Kraus last week unplugged from this world, plugged into heaven, and it kept the car going. Where God can go, oh, hi, Heidi. How you doing? Sure, I'll keep that car running. You and Kurt, well, I can make a drop of gasoline last for as many miles as I want to.
And I said, there's no way we're going to make it because there's nothing here. And there wasn't, with that needle buried in the E.
And you went like 50 miles on nothing?
Yes, on nothing.
Wow.
There was nothing in that gas tank.
But she just kept saying, everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine. I said, oh, I'm glad you feel that way, because I'm telling you, this car should be stalled right now.
How did she explain that it was going to be okay? What was that?
Prayer.
And I just gave him the sign of the cross. And I'm like, we're going to be okay, pointing up, and I can talk to him.
She just said that she asked for it and it's going to happen. That we're not going to be stuck. We're not going to be left for dead on those back roads.
I see myself as Kurt looking at Heidi in the car as bewildered. Go listen to that last episode. Kurt was bewildered. Where is this coming from? How can you not be worried? We're running out of gas. We're going to be lost out here, walking who knows where to try to find gas. And she's looking up, going, making the sign of the cross, and just, he's got this. She had peace. In that storm, she had peace, plugged into that higher power source. And God said, oh, well, then you receive more. It's the way it works, cause and effect. It is cause and effect. And that's not to say he's going to bail us out of every situation, because sometimes we're to experience things as a way of fortifying us for the next thing. Jesus, I trust in you. Daily mantra. I'm going back to Heidi again this week for one of our stories. I got 3, maybe 4 stories here about this kind of trust, this ridiculous faith that happens. And you know what happens when we have ridiculous faith? You know who shows up? The ridiculous God. He is ridiculous at what he will do. Get this one. Get this one. Heidi again. This happened 8 years ago. She's got her then 6-month-old son Connor in the back in his car seat, right? It's been snowing a lot.
Like, we talking about 3 feet of snow. I turned the corner to go onto the street, or to get to the main road. And as I turned, I hit ice. I hit it I hit it so hard that I wasn't going fast, but you know how ice speeds you up? And you're out of control. So you're going faster and faster and faster. Well, that's what happened. The car turned sideways on a side street. So there were cars parked along the side street. And so there's cars parked along one side, cars parked along the other. There's snowbanks. So the car started to turn sideways, and it literally went completely sideways. So I was terrified. I took my hands off the wheel, my foot off the gas. I put my hands on my face, and I said, God, please just, if you're going to get us through this, please just get us through this. And then the car stopped. I didn't hear, because I was going to hit that car. I was going to hit the car with where Connor was. Connor was back where I was going to go straight sideways into the back end of a car. And there was nothing, no noise, no anything. So I slowly do that opening my eyes thing where I kind of just like peek out my fingers and go, what? What's going on? And then I open my eyes completely, and I'm literally between the car parked on the side of the road and the snowbank on the other side of the road, sideways in my car. And I get out of the car, and I could put two fingers between me, my back end of my car, and the car parked on the side of the road, and I could put maybe a foot between me, not even, maybe 6 inches between me and the snowbank. And I was parked completely, like my car went completely sideways on the road.
Nice
oh
parallel parking there. Nice parallel parking.
Right.
So her car is across the road. You got this picture? It's across the road, totally blocking the road because behind her is a car parked against the curb, and in front of her is a giant snowbank. So she's just sitting there lodged in between the two, totally blocking the road. Now what?
There was a guy sitting in his house drinking coffee laughing at me. And he did not come out and help me. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so I get out of the car and I go up to the house where the car's parked in front of, and I knock on the door and nobody answers. I'm like, great. I could be stuck here forever. You know, how late is this house going to be? Is anybody even going to come back? I couldn't move forward because the snowbank was in the front of me and the car was behind me. I couldn't go anywhere. And I just got back in the car and go, I don't know what to do. 5 minutes went by. And I'm like, God, what do I do? I don't know. 5 minutes goes by and two girls come down the street. And they get out of the car and like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just stuck. I can't move anywhere. I'm like, oh, this is my brother's house. I'll just go get him. He's at a couple streets down, moving somebody at their house. I'm like, seriously? So I was there for 15 minutes, tops.
A stream of blessings there for Heidi. And I've told you, I've thrown the word coincidence out of my vocabulary. Just a coincidence that, she went sideways and missed everything and everybody and nobody got hurt and nothing got bent. And just a coincidence that she's just inches on both ends of her car from hitting something. And just a coincidence that those girls came walking along at that time. It's all coincidence. I don't think so. I think this is all part of God's Google car, if you will, of just, little. And again, I'm not saying anybody should just say, here, God, you drive. I got to check something in the glove box. This was in the moment through the Holy Spirit. The Spirit is involved in this of just let go. And that's come up a few times in these podcasts where people just get this push to let go because something has to happen through God. And Heidi has such spirit in her. She, I believe, was pushed to let go, and it worked out perfectly. She couldn't have driven into that spot. She couldn't have orchestrated those girls coming along at any better time. Everything is just, it's just the plan of God playing out, and she was, playing her role by letting go. But again, I'm not saying as you're driving along to do that. That was the situation at that time. And that was her faith, her trust in action, if you will. So, and here's another case. Again, not saying that anyone should let go, but in the moment. What gets me about this story is what happens in the moment at the highest point of stress possible for Linda Coleman. This actually happened a few years back during the Blind Faith Live podcast. I was talking to Linda about this particular event, similar to Heidi's.
Then the last day we had an icy weather, and I was going home from work, and I slipped on black ice, and my car started going and spinning around and around. And I tried to control it, the way they say, go into this, spin, and I did, and it just kept going and going. Finally, I put my hands up to the Lord and said, Lord, you take the wheel.
Oh, Mike, you literally let go.
I let go.
Okay.
And said, Lord, wherever I land, it's up to you. And I let him control. And that car spun and hit one of the big green signs on the side of the road, the metal pole, and it totaled my car. Totaled it. And the sheriff, when they came, they said if it had turned any other way, I wouldn't have been walking out of there. I'd have been dead. Because Jesus took the wheel.
The car's totaled, but you were okay because you hit in a certain particular way, basically.
Right. Yeah, because God made it spin one more time to hit that pole and behind me, and not the side or in front of me. Yeah. So he had plans for me still being here.
I don't know if I've ever heard of anyone just letting go of the steering wheel.
I did. I had to give it up to God.
But to be in the moment and to give it up to God.
I did.
You know what I'm saying? Not everybody in the moment to be so aware to say, God, take this.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it was. I had no choice but let him handle the situation and what I was going to do. So I gave it to God.
Let's see if they try driver training with this idea. What do you think?
Crazy. I am always so impressed by the people who, in the moment, at the moment of the greatest stress, right to God. Right to God. That is just so impressive. I was thinking about, was it episode 9 of the Touched by Heaven podcast? Pamela Sveck. She and her fiance were in Hawaii. They got up really early. They're on the island of Hana. They're driving up this remote road. They're seeing nobody on the road, and there's these lookouts along the way so you can take pictures and everything.
Bumpy road. It's like in between. There's no gas stations. You have to make sure you fill up, and you don't see a lot of people until you get to the Hana town. There's overlooks, so I guess you are up high because you'd get out and then look down and you'd see waterfalls. It's beautiful.
So you were on that road.
So we were on that road, and I think it was like our first stop. I can't remember. And I said, "Oh, we got to go stop. There's a waterfall over there." So we jump out of the car, shut the door, we're taking photos, we're looking down. And as I'm walking back to the car, I got that sinking feeling. Oh, crud, I locked the keys in the car and it's running. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We're like in the middle of nowhere. And I started to get that worried feeling. And then well, he wasn't my husband at the time. He's very Italian. He's like freaking out, like, oh, Pamela, what are we going to do? This is crazy. And he's banging on the door. We're never going to get it open. And he's trying to open the door. And then I just said, don't worry. Just stop worrying. Help's coming. And he said, what are you talking about? You're so crazy with that weird. I go, no, just please. Help is coming. I feel it's just going to come. Don't worry. We're not going to worry about this. It's coming. It's going to be fine. Almost to that moment, this pickup, and we didn't see any car on the road before that. Suddenly we see this pickup truck, this blue truck coming around the bend. And we're just sort of like, we couldn't believe a car was coming. And he pulls right off to where we were without us having to wave him down or anything. And he gets out. And it was like this blue pickup, all kind of beat up with stuff rattling around the back. He gets out, his hair's like all disheveled, I remember. And I think he just had jeans on. I don't remember the shirt. It could have been white, but I don't really remember the color. And he gets out and he's like, you need some help? And we're like, kind of like, yeah. We locked our keys in the car and the car's running. He goes, oh yeah, hold on a minute. And he goes in the back of his truck for a second and comes back with the big long metal thing, and took him about 10 seconds. He opens up the car, and we're sort of just in awe of this whole thing, because I'm thinking it just happened so fast. And then he said, okay, you're all set. And we said, oh, thank you so much. He gets, and then this is the part that blew us away the most. He gets back in his truck, he turns it around and drove off in the direction it came from.
Wow. Like you were the mission. He was on.
He just came over, and we didn't have to wave him down. He drives right over to us. We didn't like jump up and down like, hey, we need help or anything. He just comes around the bend, drives off into the little area where we were, and gets out, and that was it.
An angel to the rescue. And that's what we talked about in that particular episode 9 of the Touched by Heaven podcast. Once again, just trusting, someone's on the way. What? Where do you get that? I don't know. Somebody's on the way. We're going to be fine. Trust. Here's okay, we're going to get out of the car on this particular one. This isn't a car trust story, but this is like one of my favorites. This is just one of my favorites. We had in the Blind Faith Live episodes as well, of trust. Of once again, kind of throwing your hands in the air and going, I have a problem, and you're the only one that can solve it at this particular moment. We're going back. We're talking to Steve Eierman about his mom. This happened in the 90s when Steve was going to college. He was coming home from college, and I'll just play it from the podcast itself, from Blind Faith Live, and let it go, because it will all just unfold in this beautiful trust. When Steve was going to college, he was coming home from college, and Mom was fixing a big spaghetti dinner. And she was also inviting friends over, including Marietta. Now, Marietta agnostic at best, and would make fun of Steve's mom because she was always praying. She was very overt about her faith and her prayers. And so here's Marietta, always ready to jump at the opportunity to go, to kind of jabber a little bit about her faith.
And my mom was making spaghetti. This is in the days before prepared sauces like ragu and such. So my mother was putting together some spaghetti sauce in a big pot. And, they're carrying on a conversation and they're drinking and there's a lot of banter. And my mom's just doing her thing at the stove while, there's a conversation going on. And, she realizes that she didn't have any tomato paste. And, the little can of the thick stuff. And she said something about it, and Marietta mocked my mother in a jovial way. I mean, they were very good friends. And so, Marietta says, "Oh, why don't you pray for it?" And so my mother takes her up on this challenge and kind of tongue in cheek, but all of my mother's prayers are sincere. Right. And, so the way I remember it is she kind of raised her hands and, she made this exaggerated kind of prayer. "Dear Lord, please, I don't have any tomato paste. I need tomato paste, please. If you have any tomato paste, send me some tomato paste." And, of course, no tomato paste appeared on the countertop. So she thought, well, let's make do with what we've got. And she found a big can of tomato sauce. And, they're carrying on the conversation. They're not really thinking about this anymore. And, my mom opens up the can of tomato sauce and she pours it into the pot while there's some conversation going on. And out of this can of tomato sauce comes a small can.
Amidst all the goo of the red.
Yes, it's all mixed in. There is tomato sauce in this can, but there's also a small can, the size of a can of tomato paste. And everybody just flipped out. I mean, I remember I was there. There was screaming going on. Of course, they open it up and it is filled with tomato paste. Exactly what had been prayed for. And the screaming got even louder. I've never heard of a can of anything being in anything else, much less exactly the product you're praying for at the moment.
Right.
So that it's absolutely extraordinary. I do honestly think my mother's prayers are very powerful. But there is a postscript to this story.
Okay.
This isn't just tomato paste and wowing an agnostic to go, look at that. Maybe prayer does work. Maybe you should think about there is a God and God does answer these prayers. God expanded beyond that, well beyond that.
Years later, the son of Marietta,
the agnostic.
Yes. Okay. And he's a very devout believer. He's an evangelical Christian, and he's the headmaster of a Christian school in Atlanta. And so years later, he was diagnosed with brain cancer, and it was very serious. And he called my parents for support and asked for their prayers. And of course, they prayed for him, but they also went to the store and they bought a can of tomato paste and they mailed it to him as a reminder of, what God can do. And he was healed. The doctors considered it miraculous. And to this day, he has that can of tomato paste on his mantle in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's really about the power of prayer. So it's a beautiful thing. It's almost comical. It's kind of cartoonish. It's very simple. I've never heard of anything like this, but I was there and I saw it, and I am a witness.
Imagine a world where everybody has that kind of faith and trust. That's a different world than the one we're living in, right? When it's just, and it's catchy, where one person sees it and goes, "Oh, this does work," and then another person, like in that story. Imagine a world in which we have that in the moment kind of faith and trust that we just hand things over to God. Just that trust. I'll finish up here with a story that my wife Beth, she saw on Facebook and she shared it. I don't even know if this story is true or not. I love the message in it. I imagine it has roots in truth somewhere. And because it's about trust, and it's something we can all relate to. It has to do with this guy a very wealthy man. I believe he was of the stinking rich category, and he was taking some of us commoners out to dinner, and they saw him do something. So he was going. They were going to this restaurant that was both fancy and schmancy, and on the sidewalk, this really rich dude he stopped and looked down, and they saw him spot a penny on the sidewalk, and he bends over and he picks it up and he looks at it and he smiles like he just hit the mother lode or something, sticks it in his pocket, and everyone heads into the restaurant. And they're kind of wondering, what's that about? This is not a guy who needs a penny, right? So they're having dinner, and during the course of the dinner, the one of the women there said, what was the deal with the penny outside? What was that? Is it a collectible? Did you notice? And he kind of smiled and went, no. He reaches into his pocket and he pulls out the penny. And he says, well, read it. And she's like, United States of America. He says, keep reading. 1 cent. Keep reading. In God we trust. Bingo. There you go. He said, when I find a penny, and I pick it up and I look at it, he says, that's on all of our money, It's on all the coins. It's on everything. In God we trust. And we kind of look by it. We don't even see it anymore. He says, I take that as a personal message from God. I take that as a conversation starter. This is God starting a conversation with me of, do you? It says in God we trust. Do you? Where are you right now? And so he says, when I look at that penny, I do a quick check, like of my home life, my work life, my life, all aspects of my life, spiritual life, everything I'm doing. Am I trusting in God right now? And he says, it's just a way of bringing me back home again. And for a few days, that's on my mind. And then, things fade. We go back to our worries and stresses of not trusting so much. And then he says he'll find another penny, and it kind of brings him back, right? So the woman who asked him about the penny, a few days later, she was having a stressful day at work and everything, and she was worrying and fretting and all this kind of stuff. And then sure enough, she's walking outside and she sees a penny on the sidewalk. She picks it up, is like, oh, and it brings her back home. Am I trusting in God, or am I hanging out too much in worry and stress and all the things that come up in the course of a day that we all worry about? But we need these constant reminders. So she was kind of like, okay, God, conversation starter. Conversation starter. Thank you for the penny. And I've mentioned before on these Touched by Heaven podcasts that these Touched by Heaven moments, these heaven and earth collisions, are conversation starters for all of us. Whether they're our own or hearing somebody else, it's like a conversation starter of, are we trusting in God? Are we open to what God can do? Are we seeing? Are we hearing? Are we listening to how God is trying to get our attention? Which does lead, inevitably, hopefully, to, as we sit in that car, that Google car, that we don't touch the steering wheel quite so often. I mean, we're still going to grab it now and then because of who we are. But the less we grab that steering wheel and the more we let him drive, the more peace we will have in our lives. The souls that trust in me receive more. Jesus, I trust in you. I do. I trust that you have a story and you're going to share it with me. Go to touchedbyheaven.net. Contact me there. I'll be talking to you. And in the upcoming episodes, your story will be fortifying others. Trapper Jack, that would be my name. I'm pretty sure of that. Go to touchedbyheaven.net. Contact me there. I look forward to talking to you. Okay. Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack. See you next week.